Well, hello everybody. Nice to see you all. While we're waiting for another couple of people to get in, I just want to mention that the course which I have been talking about is, I started putting it up. It's on Teachable, teachable.com. That's a website that hosts classes and things like that. And if anyone wants to go and have a look at it, here it is. It's Kabbalah decoded.teachable.com. Kabbalah decoded, hyphenated, Kabbalah-decoded.teachable.com. That's our website for these hosted classes. And hopefully you'll all sign up over there. This is going to be a course in the essentials of Kabbalah. In other words, all the essential teachings that a person needs to know in order to feel that they've accomplished a certain amount of learning in Kabbalah. So, without further ado, I think we will start. And the class tonight, as I've been mentioning, is just 1 second here. Just 1 second. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to manage certain things over here which are not going the way they're supposed to. Okay, well, it's not going to work. We'll just spotlight that and that's it. Okay. It should not be showing all of the, I don't know, I can't fix it now, but whatever. All right, we'll just continue the way we're going now. Okay, so as I mentioned before, the idea is that I'm sorry, I'm very distracted here. We're going to be discussing the upcoming year. The upcoming year is we're a couple of weeks away from it. Just about a little bit more than 2 weeks away from the Jewish New Year, and it's worth thinking about what the year means. Now, every year, as you probably know by now, has a number in Hebrew. So the number of the coming year is 5,779, 5779. And that date changes from 5778 on the first day of Tishrei. The first day of Tishrei, which is again in just over 2 weeks. So the Hebrew date, the 5779, can also be expressed in letters, as I'm sure you're all aware. If you have a look over there. Can you all see the, 1 second here. I should probably share screen for this. 1 second. Again, I'm not doing too well today here. Share screen, here we go. All right, yeah, here, can you see it now? There you go, okay. So, the year is 5779, and in Hebrew that reads Taf Shin Ayin Tet. The 5 we leave out for now because the 5 is just 5,000 years, 5,779. But the most important part, the part that changes, is 779. So we just have highlighted that 779. Okay, Taf Shin Ayin Tet. Now, as I usually do, the point of that's what I'm supposed to be doing. There we go. Okay. So the point of this is to find a verse. To find a verse which has all of these letters in it, the Tafshin Ayin Tet, and then understand what the verse is talking about from that. So let's have a look quickly at the verse which I found, and that is the following. Again, I'll have to do screen share here. Sorry, we're a bit of a balagan tonight. Okay. Okay, so that is the that is the verse it's a verse which is in Mishlei, Proverbs 15:30, Proverbs Tet Vav Lamed, and the verse reads as follows: Me'or einaim yisamach leiv, shmua toiva tedashen atzim, which translated loosely is enlightened eyes will gladden the heart, good news will fatten the bones. So this shin tet taf ayin, the letters in a slightly different order from that word, but it doesn't make any difference. Since it's not a word, it's just the numbers of the word. Therefore, it is. Let's just find the way it is. So Shmua Toiva Tedashen Atzem. That's what we have to look at, and that's what we have to understand. This particular verse over here, which is the idea of good news, enlightening, good news fattening the bones. Good news fattening the bones. So now, what does this all actually mean? What is this all about, and what is the idea behind what's going on? So there's a Talmudic statement. There's a statement in the Talmud that reads as that states as follows. The statement in the Talmud is yeah. Now something seems to not be going quite right over here. I'm trying to figure out why this thing is not working properly today. I have no idea why, but what do you see now? Does everybody see me in the picture, or you see my screen, the screen with writing on it? What is it that you see, guys? See you. Oh, okay. All right, fine. I can't figure out what's going on over here. There's something not quite right tonight. Okay. Not the best night for things not to go well, but that's just the way it is. Okay, so there's a story that is told in the Talmud. The story in the Talmud, the Talmudic tractate is called Gittin. It's about essentially the tractate is about divorce, but there's many other subjects. As every tractate in the Talmud, there's many subjects which are discussed there, and it's in Gittin, page 56a to 56b. Now, the story that the Talmud tells takes place. Let me just give you the context of the story. The story is about maybe the evil inclination. Yeah, that could be. Huh? All right. So let's see what we can do to make this go a little bit more smoothly now. So the story that's told in the Talmud, the context of the story is as follows. Jerusalem was under siege by the Romans. This was the time that the Second Temple existed, and this is taking place in basically the first century of the Common Era, and in the early first century of the Common Era, and the temple is the objective of the Roman hordes, the Roman army. The Roman army under the leadership of Vespasian. Aspasinus in Hebrew. Vespasian is the Roman general who is intent on destroying the temple and conquering Jerusalem. And the people are under siege, and they can't go out of the city because the city is basically the gates of the city of Jerusalem are manned by what is called in the Talmud biryonim. Biryonim basically means thugs who have surrounded, who have taken over the city. Jewish thugs, unfortunately, and they were very politically oriented, and they refused to give up to the Romans, even though it would mean that a huge number of people would get killed. And the sages felt, based on prophecies, that they should give up to the Romans. They should acquiesce to the Roman leadership, the Roman rule of the entire Middle East there, and not fight against the Romans. But these biryonim, these thugs, refused to do that. Now, one of the leaders, perhaps the greatest leader of that time, was someone named Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So he devised a plan to get outside of the city and essentially to give up the city to the Romans. So what did he do? He had a nephew that was actually one of these thugs, or at least he was friendly with those thugs. And he said to the nephew, "We're going to try and get me out of the city. How would you suggest to do it?" So his nephew told him, "Well, let's say that you died of starvation, because most of the people were starving. It was under siege. There was no food in the city. And we'll carry you out in a coffin. And then you'll be able to get outside." So that's what they did. To cut a long story short, I don't want to go into all the details, but they took the coffin outside the gates to go bury it in the burial yards outside of the cemetery outside of the gates. And Vespasian and Rabbi Yochanan then went to Vespasian, and he said to him, we want to give up the city. But he called him king. He said, "King Vespasian, we want to give up, and you will take the city and don't harm anybody." So Vespasian said to Rabbi Yochanan, "First of all, I'm not a king, and you're worthy of death because you called me king. Only the emperor in Rome can be called king. You called me king, you're worthy of death. That's number one. Number two, if I'm the king, why didn't you come to me earlier? If I am the king, why did you not come to me earlier?" So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai told him, "We couldn't come because there were the biryonim preventing me from getting out." So Vespasian said to him, "If there's a snake curled around a honey barrel, a barrel of honey, would you not smash the barrel in order to get rid of the snake?" This is the story that's being told in the Talmud. Rabbi Akiva, some say it was Rabbi Yosef, some say it was Rabbi Akiva, said, unfortunately, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai couldn't answer. He became confused. And the idea is, there's a verse that says that he makes wise men retreat and makes their knowledge foolish. In other words, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, even though he was the greatest sage of the generation, just simply didn't know what to answer. What should he have answered, said Rabbi Akiva? If you come with the pincers and you take off the head of the snake, then the barrel will be left untouched. Now, obviously, there was all kinds of hints going on here, what this was really talking about. Who was the snake, and what was the barrel of honey, and who would kill the snake, and so on and so forth. But let's not go for that now. Let's first continue with the story. So, in the meanwhile, a messenger arrived from Rome. He just arrived from Rome, and he said to Vespasian that the previous emperor died, and the tribunal, or whatever it was, not called the tribunal, maybe the tribunal, have appointed you to be the next king, the next emperor of Rome. At that point in time, Vespasian was tying on his shoes. He was tying the laces of his shoes. He had one shoe on, and he was tying the laces of that. And when he heard the news, he tried to put his other shoe on, but it didn't fit. It didn't fit on his foot for some strange reason. And he noticed this and said, well, that's pretty strange. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, well, there's a verse that says as follows. The last part of the verse, again, good news makes the bones grow fat. That is what happened. Your bones grew fat because they brought you good news. So he said, so what should I do about it? And he answered him, if you think of your enemies for a few minutes, your bones will return to their normal thing, and you can put you into the normal size, and you will put your shoe on. You'll be able to put your shoe on. In any event, because he saw the wisdom of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, so Vespasian granted him one request, and that request was for Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai asked for the sages and for the city of Yavne. There's a city in Israel called Yavne, and he asked that the sages be allowed to leave the city and to go to Yavne, so it would save the leadership of the generation, not the political leadership, but the wisdom leadership of the generation. And so it was, and that's what happened. So the Talmudic story, therefore, is an interesting one in the sense that the idea that simply good news, good things, can affect the physical world, can affect the physical body, is a very important idea. And that's what this idea is essentially all about. That's what this year is teaching us, that spiritual things are going to be able to affect the physical world in a very positive way. Shmur toivet adashen atzim. The bones will grow fat from it. In other words, people will be in a state of, as we'll see soon enough, people will be in a state of great delight, spiritual delight. When a person is in a state of spiritual delight, then the body automatically becomes enlarged. The physical being becomes enlarged. There's a famous story actually about this. Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl. Rabbi Nachum of Chernobyl was a Hasidic rabbi, a rebbe, a grand rabbi of the Hasidic dynasty called Chernobyl, from the city of Chernobyl actually. And the story is told about him that he was rather large physically. But one of the great sages of that time testified that his largeness, his size, was not because he overate. In fact, it's well known that particularly the Polish rabbis from that time, you get fat when you get spiritually aware. We'll talk about it in a minute. One of the other great rabbis of that time, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the author of the Tanya, said that he did not get fat from eating. He got fat from saying the prayer, Amen Yeheshmei Rabbah. Yeah, Amen, may his great name be magnified and praised, etc., etc. May the name of God be magnified and praised. And that's what caused him to grow large. Now, there are many people that grow large, and most of them not because of not because of saying Amen Yeheshmei Rabbah, but because they say a blessing on cake before they eat it. That's the reason. Yeah, grow fat from cake, and it's not from the saying the blessing, but more from the cake than anything else, probably. In any event, that's the story of Rabbi Nachman Chernobyl. Now, what's important over here? What's important over here is that the concept of the spiritual affecting the physical, the spiritual world, the inner spiritual world, the soul affecting the physical body in a positive way, is an extremely important concept in Kabbalah generally. There's a concept in Kabbalah which is emphasized particularly in Hasidic teachings, And that is, it's actually based on a midrash. And the midrash says as follows, that why did God create the world? Because he desired a dwelling place in the lower worlds. In Hebrew, nita'ava HaKadosh Baruch Hu liot lo dira b'tachtonim. He wanted a dwelling place in the lower worlds. In other words, what God wanted was there should be a world, and the word world in Hebrew, as we know, the word world, olam, is from the word he'elem. He'elem means concealment. He wanted a world in which godliness would be concealed in order for us to bring godliness into revelation. That was the whole point. That was why he created this world, that this world would be a place where godliness is concealed in order that we would, not that he would, but that we would bring the revelation of godliness into the world. That's called Dira B'Tachtonim, making him a dwelling place, an apartment, so to speak, a house down below in this world. That house, of course, was the temple, and the house is the temple within every single person. In other words, the inner temple that everybody has, the soul, the heart, whatever you want to call it. So the point being that the effect of having spirituality affect this physical world is an extremely important one, and can be a very positive one. You see, the people very often, people who are what they call marashchornikas, people who are sort of depressed and unhappy and so on. They're very thin usually, right? Because they have no delight in anything. They don't delight in life. Now, to delight in food is not exactly what we're talking about here, but people who are happy, people who are spiritually fulfilled. People who are spiritually fulfilled have the ability to translate that spiritual fulfillment into making their environment into a positive spiritual environment. In other words, a person's vibes, if you want to put it in that kind of terminology, a person's spiritual vibes can affect the environment in which they're in. That is why we are told that beware of people who have negative spiritual vibes. Stay away from them. Don't go near them. Why? Because just getting into their presence can have a detrimental effect on a person. Now, that doesn't mean to say that when a person is in trouble or something like that, you shouldn't go and help out. Of course you should, but you have to be careful of people who broadcast negativity. One has to be careful of people who broadcast negativity, because that negativity spreads and it has an effect on ourselves as well. Conversely, people who have a positive spiritual effect on others, those are the people whose company we should try and keep as far as possible. People who we should get involved with. Okay. So, why is this important? It is important because there is a special segula, a special proclivity, let's call it, in this year, a special ability in this coming up year for us to be able to spread out good vibes. Shmua toiva, in other words, good news. Spread out good news. Don't talk about the bad news. There's always bad news. Now, the news organizations are built on bad news. Bad news, it's actually a statistic that I read somewhere once, that bad news sells twice as much, at least, as good news. Good news, people don't focus on. Bad news seems to be a much more attractive thing. And therefore, turning on the various TV channels and the radio channels and so on and so forth is not necessarily something beneficial to us. It's something that, in fact, can be detrimental and cause us, spiritual harm. But someone who cultivates good news, in other words, someone who looks for the good in a situation, no matter, even if the situation sometimes might be a tough situation, but nevertheless you can see the good side of it. There's something good that comes out of it. there is a positive aspect to it, and that's what you're looking for. Ma'or enayim samach lev, the enlightened eyes gladden the heart. In other words, you have to look for the light and not for the darkness. Then the good news can have a positive effect on us physically. Not only can good news have a positive effect on us physically in the sense of making us feel at ease, but it can, in fact, it can be a healing phenomenon. It can be a healing phenomenon. There's many, many stories about such things. That, in fact, there's a story of the story of the Baal Shem Tov. Just shortly before the Baal Shem Tov passed away. So he instructed each of his disciples as to what they should do when he passed away. He obviously knew when he was going to pass away. And one of his close disciples, who was actually his personal attendant, called the Gabbai, he told him that he should go around telling stories. That's what he should do. He should tell stories of what he witnessed during the life of the Baal Shem Tov. And that's what he did. And he went around from city to city, and this is how, in fact, he was supported there. Thereby, people would pay him to hear good news, to hear these stories, to hear these positive things. So he went to a certain very wealthy man that was reputed to give a ruble every time someone told him a story of the Baal Shem Tov. Anyway, to cut a long story short, it's actually quite a long story. This man had been someone who, unfortunately, had moved very, very far away from the good life and the positive life. And he did reform himself. But however much he reformed himself, he felt that his repentance and his change of heart had not been fully accepted. So he went to the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov told him that when someone comes to you and they tell you the story, when one of my disciples tell you the story about yourself, then you will know that your repentance has been accepted, that you're fully in the clear. And in fact, that's exactly what happened. When this Rabbi Yaakov came to this very wealthy man, he forgot all the stories. He couldn't remember a single story. He obviously realized it was something supernatural, because he knew hundreds, even thousands of stories, and he couldn't remember a single one of them. And he was there for 1 day and 2 days and 3 days, and eventually he remembered a story. And it was a story about this particular man. And then the man told him why he was so eager to hear stories about the Baal Shem Tov, and that now he understood that his change of heart had been accepted. But when that happened, like this sort of pain and difficulty and uncertainty like rolled off him once he heard the story about himself, and he became really physically, you could see he was a changed man. And that's why they say that a good news brightens the face. There's a story about a Talmudic sage named Rabbi Abahu, right? Rabbi Abahu. And it said whenever he found a new teaching, his face would light up and shine. It would actually shine. His face would shine. Like Moses' face shone with the light of the divine presence. Rabbi Abahu, yeah. Rabbi Abahu. How would you spell it? Abahu, I guess. Abahu. Yeah? Abahu. And yes, and that's the way it was. Now, I'll tell you another example of such a thing. Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the author of the Tanya, the founder of the Chabad Lubavitch branch of Hasidism, of the Hasidic dynasty, and his son were two very opposite types. It said that Rabbi Shneur Zalman exemplified the concept of Chokhmah, and we should speak about this actually sometime, how the Baal Shem Tov represented the inner dimension of Keter. His chief disciple, who was the Maggid Mezrich, Rabbi Dovber represented the outer dimension of Keter. Rabbi Shneur Zalman was Chochmah, and Rabbi Dovber was Bina. So one of the differences between Rabbi Shneur Zalman and Rabbi Dovber was in their physical coloring, Rabbi Shneur Zalman once Rabbi Dovber once asked his father, Rabbi Shneur Zalman, why is it that you're so white? Right? He was very pale skin, very, very white. You know, when I'm talking about white, I don't mean just white skin, but he was a very pale white, like a very white, bright face, but very white. So Rabbi Shneur Zalman answered. He said, because my teacher was very white. His teacher was Rabbi Dovber, the Magen was rich, because my teacher was very white. And he said, but why are you, Rabbi Shneur Zalman said to his son, but why are you very red? Like your skin, you have a reddish complexion, not only the hair, but the face. His complexion was reddish. It's like red in the face most of the time. Why is it that you're red? Not embarrassment, but why is it that you're red? So Rabbi, the rabbi, the son of Rabbi Shneur Zalman, his name was also Dovber. He was named after Shneur Zalman's teacher. Dovber said because the Baal Shem Tov was red. Baal Shem Tov went red, and therefore I'm red. He was a descendant of the Baal Shem Tov, which means, in Kabbalistic terms, what this means is that the Galut, the revelation of Atik, which is the inner dimension of Keter, is in Bina. Galut HaKeter bebina, Pnimiyut HaKeter bebina. His Galut of Atik is in Bina. That delight, that is the inner dimension of Keter, is delight. Atik, the inner dimension of Atik, is Tainug. Right? The inner dimension of Keter is called Tainug, delight. That delight is expressed where? In Bina. Because Bina is Aim Habanim Smecha. The mother of children is in a state of joy. Delight and joy are very closely connected. Delight is more of an inward experience, and joy is the more outward experience of it. So, therefore, the idea of inner delight can be expressed in joyful conduct. And when a person conducts himself in that way, then his whole demeanor, his or her whole demeanor changes into a very positive, nothing's a problem kind of attitude. That's what's called the attitude, or what is sometimes called lechatchila ariber. Right, from the outset, you go over the top. Whenever you come to a barrier, there's three ways of dealing with a barrier. One is to skirt around it, pretend it's not there, and just find a way around it. The other one is to duck until things change. You go under it, so to speak. You go under the barrier. And the third way, which is the most preferable way, the best way, is to go over the top. That is the way that is suggested in Hasidic teachings. Go over the top. In other words, don't deal with problems if they're problems. Deal with problems as if they're simply challenges, and they're there to be overcome in order to hop over the barrier, to lift you up to a higher level, so that you can just simply jump over the barrier. So, all in all, that's what this year represents. Yes, there will be challenges. Of course, there'll be challenges this year, but there won't be problems. It's going to be a year of good news, and therefore, Tadashen Atzem, our essence. The word etzem stands for, can mean in Hebrew, can mean bone. It can also mean essence. The essence gets fatter. In other words, the essence feels and experiences delight. It's going to be a year where we experience delight, and we have the possibility of making sure that we grab onto that. Don't look for the darkness, look for the light. The light of the eyes will cause the heart to rejoice, as we said in that verse. I'll just get the verse up there again, and you'll be able to see it. Let's go on. Let me get the verse up again so you can see. And now I'm going to share screen again. Yeah, there we go. Yes, good. Okay, so here we go. Enlightened eyes, or if you want to read it as this, the light of the eyes, Me'orei Einaim, the light of the eyes, will gladden the heart. In other words, when you look for the light and you look for the good things, that gladdens the heart, and then good news fattens the bones. In other words, good news fattens thee. You don't have to read it as bones. You can read that, in fact, as essence. Good news fattens the essence. It makes the essence even more essential than it was before, so to speak. Now, this is my prediction for this coming year, and if we play our cards right, for sure it's going to be like this. But whether it's like that in the outer world, in the world at large, depends very much on how we perceive things. They're not so much facts as they are perceptions. Two people could see the same thing and they can explain it completely differently. They can experience it completely differently, even though it's entirely the same thing. So it depends on us. If you look towards the light, I think you will find that the year is going to be a year of fattening the essence, a year of excellence. It's a year of Shmua, Toiva, Tadash, and Atzem, a year where everything's going to come out in the best possible way. In any event, I give my blessing for all of you that in the coming year that you experience this, and this becomes a reality, and spread it around. That's the main thing. Spread it around to all your friends and to all your compatriots and so on and so forth, family in particular. I just want to give it a short plug again for the new up-and-coming course. As I mentioned before, the course is going to be hosted by Teachable, so it's Kabbalah-decoded.teachable.com, and the course will be up. It should be up fairly soon, in another few days, but for sure by the first week of September. So the first week of September it should be up, and I hope you will sign up and enjoy, and let's take it from there. All right, are there any questions?